Hey. Welcome, everybody. It's been a while since I've been able to stream and show some ZBrush World to you all. Thank you all for tuning in, watching the stream with me, coming along for this ride. I'm excited to be with you today and show you some things. So I'm sure if you haven't seen already, now that ZBrush is part of the Maxon ecosystem, there is now, today we announced another way for you guys to get access to ZBrush. So you still have a perpetual license ability. You have a monthly subscription to ZBrush. You could do a yearly subscription to ZBrush. But now that ZBrush has become part of Maxon One, you can actually get a subscription to that. And that's going to include obviously more than just ZBrush. You're going to get, example, two of the applications that you're going to be able to get with that subscription would be Cinema 4D and Redshift. So today I want to talk a little bit about how we're going to be using ZBrush kind of in this pipeline, this workflow, what you were going to be able to do and getting things from ZBrush into Cinema 4D and rendering with Redshift. I want to be able to show you all of this and what you the capabilities you have now that you have Maxon One. And at the end, I'm going to also add some extra too that's really something really cool for Maxon One for all you students and educators out there at major institutions. There's a nice thing that's also coming along with this with the Maxon One. Okay, so this is going to be a lot of fun with me. So I want to, as creators in ZBrush, the first thing I want to talk about is when we have, say, something like I have here, I want to be able to get something like this into an application like Cinema 4D and then render with Redshift. So in this example, I want to talk about really quickly, I want to get what I'm looking at here inside of ZBrush and its polygon count. So this across all my subtools, it's sitting just below 28 million. So I'm using an FBX to export this in this scenario. I want to be able to use an FBX to export. Of course, you could use an OBJ in this scenario too. And then we're going to go into Cinema 4D now, and you're going to see that I have this helmet now in Cinema 4D. And you're going to see that this runs just as smooth as if we were in ZBrush. And you're going to see here when I pull up the display, it is the exact same model that's in ZBrush, okay, inside of Cinema 4D. So you are going to be able to export your OBJs and FBX in this scenario. I'm going to show you other ways to do some things and some other nice things here. So just as always, buckle up. So this is just a great way. So let's just start with some simple things really quickly. Let's get right into some rendering stuff right out the gate, just so you guys can see what you are going to have that ability to do. So I'm going to come up here and I'm going to go in my render settings here. I'm going to make sure I actually tell, hey, I want some Redshift. I want to start using Redshift. All right. And then I want to start being able to maybe render. So I'm going to go into my window here and I'm going to come down here into the Redshift render view. I'm going to open that up. So we have this. And then for me, I want to get that feeling of I'm looking at what's going on in Cinema 4D and I want to see what's going on with the renderer as well. So I'm going to just dock this really quick over here to the side so I can have a split screen of things going on, right? And then so I'm going to start being able to send this to the render. And then the nice thing that's going to happen here is that I'm going to be sitting at the Cinema 4D over here, and then I'm going to be able to start seeing my render on the other side and start making adjustments. So I'm going to start adding some lights into this scene, maybe throwing a dome light in here and be able to do a bunch of stuff with this model all right here within inside of Cinema 4D with using Redshift at the same time. Okay, and then obviously Redshift has given us the capability to do multiple things within the renderer itself, especially things like I'm going to show you today, like some caustics and some refractions and some reflections and things like that. Okay, so this is just what I'm getting right now as just a default ability here, what I want to be able to render in here. Okay, and so let's just start really simple here. I'm going to go and create a light. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to say, let's create a dome light. And the minute I create that, we're going to start getting an update to the render. So now that I have this, you can see I get an update on the other side with my render now. Okay, and we can have some more fun with this. Let's go ahead and maybe make some new materials. So I'm going to open up my materials here so you can see all my materials that we have right through here. Okay, and I'm just going to say let's add a new material. This is now a redshift material now, so I can click and drag that in over to here, okay, and then allow that to be added to my scene here. And then what's nice about this is I want to start doing some editing to this material. So when I click and highlight this material over here, I'm going to be able to get my attributes right here to do some editing. And I think what's really nice, so I'm gonna zoom in a little bit closer here and get a little bit more into this helmet area right in there. And something really simple to do is, hey, I just want this material to start looking like something else. So over here in the presets, I can have different things, and you're like, let's make it look like iron. So you can see I'm going to update that material. It's going to update in my viewer, and then now it's going to update in the renderer itself, right? So if I don't like that, so there's some nice presets here for us to play with and seeing what we can get. And again, I'm just going to start really simple here, and we're going to keep building up here as we go along. And then I think even like say, hey, glass, why not? Makes complete sense for a helmet to have glass. Why wouldn't it? Right? Totally going against what you would use a helmet for, right? So I just want to start with the ability of we can drop in something from ZBrush right away from an FBX or OBJ, okay? And then start rendering and looking at our render, and then start playing with things within Cinema 4D itself, and then seeing what my result is going to start looking like in Redshift. Okay, but as users, we're going to want to be doing other things as well. Okay, so let's go ahead and stop that render for now. Let's make a new scene, right? I'm going to come back into ZBrush. I got to do it. I got to bring him. I feel like it's not a stream unless we have him in it. Okay, but in this scenario, we've got now this model, as you all know, I'm sure if you've opened it at some time, has painting on it. So this has poly paint on it. So I want to be able to get this into now Cinema 4D to start using with Redshift. Okay, so there is GoZ now. So we have the ability to send with the one click everything we're seeing here and throwing it in Cinema 4D. So within the tool palette up here, okay, I can have, here's your GoZ section right in here, okay, and then I've already got it going to Cinema 4D, as you can see, right? So I'm going to say all, and what that means is it's going to look at what I have here and then throw it in Cinema 4D, okay? So when I come back in Cinema 4D, it's right here, right? So this, I stopped the render, so that's why it's still showing the helmet, right? But you can see I've got everything in here that I wanted. Yay, right? So I've got that model. But what's nice is what's going over when we're going to use GoZ. There's a lot of things that are going over, i.e. polygrouping is going over. But obviously the big thing for me right now was what I want to start sending over is the paint. So over here is kind of the object area where we're going to be able to do, think of this a little bit more like us with our subtool world, right? So there's our subtools with the names. And then there's tags and stuff like what materials are assigned to the model, things like that. So right here, this is the polypaint tag. And so if I hold shift and just click on all these, I'm going to be able to see all my polypaint, and you can see that just came over, right, to us. And then we can start working on this. So I want to start though at render time, start building this though. And I'm going to show you guys what you would need to do to be able to render the polypaint off now in Redshift itself, okay? So the first thing I'm going to want to do is I'm going to folder this up. So I'm going to select all these with the shift click. I'm going to use Alt-G as in a group, okay? So this is a null, and I got to call, I'm just going to call him dude, all right? And so now we've got a folder here, and then I'm going to say let's make another new material. So again, I'm clicking this little icon, open up my material attributes. And then I'm going to say, let's put this on the actual folder, right? So right now I've got a material on the folder and I got materials on the individual model. So what I'm going to do is actually tell Cinema, I don't want any materials on the model anymore. I'm just going to go with just the material that's on the folder right now. And then I'm going to right click over here, and just for the sake, I'm going to delete all materials. So I'm only looking at this material on this model, okay? And now I want to start doing some edits to this material, okay? So you can see I can double click and get the same parameters here that we have over here. Now, this material right now is a Cinema 4D material. So again, I want to make sure and say, hey, I don't want to render in Cinema, I want to render in Redshift, okay? So you even have the ability, if I do have a material like this, I can actually come in here and I can actually even convert materials that I already have. So I can come in this area and say, let's convert that material. And you'll see by default, this now says RS, which is obviously standing for redshift. And so I would prefer this material on the model, right? So again, we're putting this material on the folder, right? So I'll delete it for again. Again, it's just click and dragging over and plopping it on there. And then there it's going to be on there. So now when I double click, I'm going to have this now pull up. Okay, so this is now a redshift material. We have node based. The Cinema 4D materials also are node based. Okay, but I have the ability here to do more with our materials and start playing with them and doing a little bit more. We have our parameters over here to adjust in the material itself. We got our graph, and then we have some nodes. So in this example, I'm going to look for a certain node. I'm going to look for a vertex attribute. So I'm going to just drag that over so I have that. Okay. And then I'm going to say, let's make this look like in here, and let's add it to our diffuse. And he's bubblegum. Yes. So what this is doing is, you can see this attribute's got this color happening here, right? So we've got, as I change this color, you'll see it update within the viewer over here. So I'll move this, I'll move this over for us. Okay, so you can see this is updating over here. And what I want to do is I want to tell Redshift, hey, I want you to look what I sent from ZBrush, which was through GoZ. I want you to look at the poly paint that's actually on this model. Okay, so opening the folder again, this tag that are here that I was highlighting, right? You'll see it's a vertex color tag, and you see each one of these have the same name, poly paint. Okay, so this is going to be beneficial for me, because then in this node, this little vertex node, I can just say, you know what I want you to do, instead of looking at green in this case, right? I want you to look at poly paint. So you can type this in, or you can even click and drag any node over and then tell it, hey, this is what I want you to look at when we come in here. Okay, so now we've got just a simple material that's going on into this scene, all right? And then now I can start rendering this out, and now it's gonna start rendering this out. Now, going back to ZBrush, while we're just letting that start from the rendering, the other scenarios too that we're gonna have. So besides just sending the model or polygon counts, besides sending the model with GoZ and not having our poly paint, having a poly groups over there, obviously the other things that we are gonna have in our workflows is something like this. And Lucas, if you're watching, I want to say thank you very much for supplying this model for me. This is not my sculpt. This is a beautiful sculpt by Lucas. So again, thank you so much, man, for letting me play with this and have this. Now, this model in particular, okay, is using UDIMs. So he's using UDIMs to have his textures come across this. And of course, in this scenario, not only am I going to want textures happening over inside of Redshift, I'm going to want also maps, like vector displacement maps, maybe regular displacement maps, or normal mapping and stuff that we can do in ZBrush. So I want to show you guys the ability of taking now a model like this as well and sending it over and getting that inside of Cinema 4D. But let's go ahead and see, let's go back over and see what we can start getting here through here, okay? So I want to start playing with this in here, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to switch to something I already have open. Okay, so this is the model that we were talking about, okay, from Lucas. All right, and what I want to do now is I want to start being able to send this information with maps, okay, over into here. So I'm going to show you guys a way that I can do this as well. So once again, this is a new scene, all right, and I've stopped the render at a point here, so that's why it's rendering out the way it is, okay? So again, we've got all my subtools here and here. And again, I brought this one over this time with OBJs. So I'm just trying to show different ways to bring stuff over. I'm not gonna sit there and actually do the exporting, because we'll just sit there and watch an export happen. So each one of these scenarios I'm sharing with you guys today is a different scenario that's going to happen, okay, for us. So let's go back first now and really quick in ZBrush, let's look at some things, the understanding of how do we get everything out. So I'm just going to turn off the colorize, so we're only looking at the sculpt. Okay, so the first thing that we need to first understand is are poly grouping with inside of ZBrush that I can use. So each one of these colors is a UDIM, okay, that he's set up, right? So obviously I want each color of these to have representations of maps, texture maps, displacement maps, or a normal map, or whatever else it might be, okay? But I need to know what the settings in ZBrush need to be in order for this to work inside of Cinema 4D with Redshift. All right, so in the preferences, today I'm going to show you guys doing vector displacements and texture mapping, because I like vector displacements even more than just a regular grayscale displacement. So I'm going to come into preferences, and what you have to do when you're doing vector displacements is you got to know what to set your switches at here in these settings I'm showing. So this is one on the left is like your object, okay, setting. So this is going to be, there's 56 options, right? And then the same thing for tangent, there's 56 options. Because every renderer is going to render out vector displacement maps differently, okay? So you need to know what number, these are, okay? So for this world that I'm living in right now, sending stuff to Cinema 4D, okay, 43 is going to be, the object one. So that's this slider on the left here, and I'll turn on my magnifier here. Okay, and then this one is 25. All right, so when I'm going to ask ZBrush to create maps now from this model, I need to make sure I have these switches turned to these numbers if I'm going to go into a Cinema 4D and render with Redshift. Okay, so now that I have this, I need to export these maps and get them out. So the easiest way is going to be using a plugin that we have, and I know some of you that are in here have done this and live with this plugin, I'm sure. Multi-map exporter, okay? And right now I'm just going to tell it to have vector displacements, right? So this is telling what to have when I export through here, right? So I can say texture from polypaint, normal maps, ambient occlusion, so forth. So down here we're going to have options through here. So I'm just going to do a 4K. I look at my export options. This is where I come down and say, what kind of vector displacement map do I actually want? Okay, so do I want a tangent? So if I want a tangent, I turn this on. If I want an object, okay, or a world, I would turn that off. For your settings, as far as going to Cinema 4D to render with Redshift, this is what you're going to want. Okay, so you just got to decide, do you want tangent or that object one? Okay, the other thing I think that's also really important for you all is don't forget about the file names. You guys can actually change your file name. So this will be a suffix right before each UDIM number in this case. And in fact, by default, this plugin's not going to have UDIM set. So you have to go into this. So in here, you just click and you can actually select what kind of mapping that you're doing, because you could be doing the other mapping way as well. And this is also now what's been added recently. You guys, this is a way for you coming down here. You can actually now with MME tell it to only remake maps for certain UDIMs now too. So this is where you can come and do this. This was added. That part was only added. I'm trying to remember. It's a blur of the versions now. I want to say maybe the version. It might have been 2020. Oh, 2022. It might be. I'm not 100% sure now because we've had so many versions within the last 18 months out. Okay, so this is all I'm going to do. Again, I'm not going to take the time to sit here and click and send them out, but all I need to do is hit create maps. I've already created the maps, all right? And it doesn't take that much time, but we don't need to be watching that. Let's get back into here, okay? And start looking at this and start running around. What does this scene start to look? Again, this is now just dropping the model in from ZBrush. And again, I'm bringing in this kaiju who's low polygon, okay, through here. All right, so let's start having a little bit more fun with this and really start to figuring out and get a little bit better render here inside. So the first thing I'm going to do is, again, I'm going to make sure that I'm in the Redshift world. Okay, so I'm going to make sure my render settings are on Redshift. I'm going to add a new camera. So I'm going to create, and I'm going to say camera in here. And I'm going to call this camera now, let's call this render. Let's call it render cam, just so it's not just called render. And what I want to do now is kind of separate my worlds here. I want the left side, which again, this is Cinema 4D, and this is now going to be my Redshift side, right? So as you can see, as I move here, right, I'm moving everything over here in the Redshift. So you can see I'm getting really good feedback right now, moving things around. But I want to get something a little bit better quality here. And so what I want is I'm going to start adding lights and everything into the scene. So as I'm navigating in Cinema 4D on this side, I don't want my render changing. So this is why I made the other camera. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here in my render view and I'm going to say, let's go render cam. Okay. And what I'm going to do is let's set up now the render cam. What framing do I actually want in this? So over here, you can say look through right here. So there's a little icon right in here, up here. So again, I'm going to click it off so you can see that the model's changing and then back on. So what's nice about this is I'm actually looking through the camera. So now when I'm doing this movement, it's actually my render camera that's doing the movement over here. Okay. So for me too, all right, I want to be able to do a couple other things with this camera. Number one, I probably want to come in here and I want to see, you can see there's different modes in here. So you can look at your project. You can see different stuff in here. You got project info for the camera. There's a lot of other things that you have through here. And I want to look at view settings is what I want to look at. And I want to look at this set frames. This is, I mean set frames, safe frames, sorry. This is something that's personal for me. I like to do that when I'm setting up my camera for rendering. I want to make sure I'm completely seeing where my framing of the camera can be. So you can see here in Cinema 4D, the darker part here and the darker part here is kind of the clipping. And right now, obviously, I can't go with a big resolution because of streaming. So the right and left side is also clipping. We just can't see it right now because I have both these next to each other. But what I like about this is I'm going to come down here and actually change the color of that. So I like to be like in your face a little bit with this when I'm setting up render. So this is just something that I like to use now when I'm going to render out in Redshift inside of Cinema 4D. So it's just something simple that it just visually, especially when we start adding stuff in here, you're going to see how beneficial this will be, being able to change the color. So I'm going to say, let's start with something like, yeah, we'll go here. Okay. So now we've got render cam over here. We've got now default camera here. Okay. So I'm going to switch to default camera. So now what this gives me the ability is now I've got Cinema 4D navigation happening, but you see my render's not changing because now the renderer is looking at my render cam. Okay. So let's start having some more fun with this. Okay. So first of all, let's make another new material here, right? So again, we can, if I want to, folder things up and assign one material to this. So I'm just going to say, let's make a new material. So there's a Redshift material. I'm going to drag this onto the model. Okay. So now it's on the model. You can see it's updated right in here. But right now there's not much to update on the Redshift side. So we're going to start doing and having some more things here that start happening. So number one, I found one of the best things that we should do is lighting. Obviously super important for us when rendering. So once again, let's do a light. Let's throw a dome light in there. And just like that, this is already starting to create a lot better of a lighting atmosphere for us. So obviously the next thing I want is, okay, great. I've got a dome in there. Let's add some more to this scene. All right, let's come over here. And in Cinema 4D, there's an asset browser. So we can open up asset browsers in here as well again. And I'm going to say HDRs. All right, so we've got a bunch of HDRs in here. And I took a bunch of HDRs that we've also done. And so we've got a library here. So my library is partially what comes with Cinema 4D and ones that we've done. So I'm a big fan of, say, this one, right? So I'm going to drag over and right in here, I'm going to drop that in. And then you can see I now have this HDRI wrapping around this dome. Okay. And then I can even start changing the dome's rotation just by switching to rotation, which is the R key if you want to know the shortcut. Okay, if you don't want to know the shortcut, you want to use the UI over here on the left. So I have the dome selected right now, and I'm just kind of setting up some simple lighting that I kind of want to maybe have through here. All right, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Okay, so this is giving me that ability through here. If I did want to turn off the environment, it's again all in here. I'm in the object of the light, and down here I can say turn off. So it's still going to render now with the HDR, but I've turned it off as the background element. in essence. Okay, so let's keep going. I don't want to just do this. Okay, let's start adding a little bit more to this material. Okay, so I want to start working on this material. And so again, you can see I can double click and the attributes come up. And so what I can do, looks like my OBS. All right, you guys are still there? Yes, okay, good. My OBS. All right, good. You guys can submit, because my OBS on my other monitor, I saw it minimized. I don't know why it minimized. I'm just making sure it didn't just go out on me. Okay, good. All right, so we got our material attributes. When you double click it, you're gonna get these attributes. It's the same thing that pops up here when you actually go through and start selecting materials, okay? And coming through this. So now I'm going to do some now in the window. I'm gonna say, let's do a node editor, right? And then this material, I wanna start editing here, okay? A little bit more. So let's start bringing in that ZBrush model now. Okay, let's start having some fun with that model, and let's bring that sculpted detail that Lucas did. Okay, so once again, I'm gonna hover anywhere and hit the C key. What we're gonna need is we're gonna need a texture. So I'm gonna bring in a texture in here. In fact, let's just drop 2 in right now, and let's bring a displacement now, because I've exported some. Might help if I spelled it correctly. I brought it. I'm gonna bring in that vector displacements that I've exported from ZBrush. Okay, so I need a displacement tab. So here we'll just move these a little bit over here. Let's see, and then we're gonna go displacement. We're gonna need a texture, which is gonna be our displacement. So what I'm gonna do now is in here, I'm gonna say, let's go get those displacements. Now again, we're dealing with UDIMs right now. So I'm gonna click on this little folder icon over here, okay? And I'm going to go into here, and you can see, here's my textures, here's my displacement. So I'm just gonna click the first one in the UDIM, so you can see it's 1001 to 1004. It's only in 4 UDIMs. I'm going to click on that. I'm going to say I don't want it to add. And you can see that pops up now. All right. And now what I want to tell Redshift is, hey, this is made up of 4 different vector displacement maps from ZBrush. So I want you to make sure all of them are being put on this model. So I'm going to, with the middle mouse, slide over. And over down here is the name of the file. I'm actually going to delete the 1001, and I'm going to put UDIM here. Okay, so that's going to tell Redshift now, when we start getting a render update through here, that's going to tell it to start using this. Okay, but I now need to say, let's take these maps, okay, and let's add it to a displacement node. So I'm going to say out color here. We'll zoom up now closer into here. I'm going to say out in here. Let's go into this displacement texture map. Okay, this is my displacement that tells what to do with the maps. I'm going to say I want those maps to be vector, and I did tangent, so I'm going to switch to my tangent. Okay, and then now the next thing I need to do is tell it, hey, I need now this to go into my displacement output, right? So I'm going to come in here and say displacement. And so now this is going to start rendering out a displacement for me inside of Redshift. It's going to take what I'm doing here with this and start having the result that we have in ZBrush, but getting it here inside of Redshift is what my goal is to have here, okay? So here, I'll restart that too, so we can refresh. So you have the ability to refresh your renders here. So this is just a render view that's playing around with this stuff. But while it's doing that, let's also continue looking at some other things. So here it's already starting to come through for me. All right, so the other thing I need to do is tell the model that, hey, I want you to use displacements with Redshift. So I'm going to click on here, which is my model. I'm going to right click on this, and let's go down to my render tag. Let's add a Redshift object. I'm going to say here my geometry. I'm going to override that geometry. I'm going to enable this, and then I'm going to tell it I want to enable displacement. Okay, and then now you can see the models that we have in ZBrush is already coming through, right? And then here I can say what's the minimum triangle length, so I can go to 1. I can say how many times to divide in this, so you can see I'm starting to get the model that we had in ZBrush. So if we zoom up here, I'll zoom up a little bit so you guys can see what's happening through here. Let's go back into here, and let's just zoom up a little bit in the viewer so we can start seeing that model and see what's going on. And so now I want to start bringing in some color information here as well. All right, so we'll put it more there so we can just get a little bit better view up close. So then this is my texture. So same thing here. I want to bring in multiple UDIM textures. So I've got the node selected. I'm just going to go into my folder. Okay, I'm going to say I want that first one. And then once again, middle mouse, dragging over. And you take that first one, that first UDIM, and tell it to actually go look at all the UDIMs. Right? And then of course, this is now going to be my color information. And I want to add that into the color of the map. And you can see already over here, it's already updating. We're already getting an update through here. And so the next step now, it's going to be sending everything to Redshift and then getting an update to Redshift. Okay. So let's continue now playing a little bit more here with what we have. Okay. So I want to start making this render look a little bit better, bring a little bit more life to the model. Okay. So this is again the benefit why I made a couple cameras, right? I want to be able to edit things here, right? So I want this to be again render cam, and I want this one to be my just default camera for moving things around over here, and then having a render cam is going to be separating the two. So now I can look at just the overview of him right now in Redshift and continue playing with him here. So the next thing I'm going to do is let's go ahead and create a plane. So we're going to go in here in a mesh. We're going to say a plane. All right. And I want to size this up. Let's go ahead and give him a ground to stand on. And you can see the plane is now populating inside of Redshift. Right. So we got that plane. Looks good. Starting to come together. But I'm adding the plane because I like having the shadows. So I'm going to come over here into the plane, and I'm going to add again a object tag here to this plane. And I'm going to come over here into this. Instead of worrying about the geometry, I'm going to come in here into the matte. I'm going to turn this on. I'm going to enable that and then enable it as the shadows. So this is now, I'm just using the plane now just to capture shadows only. Right? So that I can try and start making this guy feel like he's fitting now more in this HDRI if I want him. So now this is in here. If we want to see here the dome light, we can turn off background for now. All right. So this will start rendering out the shadows. And in fact, I can even say, well, right now by default, it's going to be rendering out the black in the background. I can even say, you know, let's add another dome light for fun. Okay, so now there's another dome light happening, and so now you'll see this is now just rendering in with the white. Okay, but it's getting also another set of lighting from the dome light. So I'm going to come in here and let's go ahead and highlight by holding the shift key. I'm going to turn this to 0 and then turn off in essence the lighting. So I held actually control and hit enter, so all these would turn to 0. So I was just highlighting all these to do that. So in essence, all I'm using the other dome light for in this scenario is just creating a white world, right? So it's not something that you have to do, but it's just, I wanted to show you guys that it's casting shadows on here. So obviously for me, I'm trying to do more back to the original dome light. I wanted to start trying to fit a little bit more in the background, right? So now you've got both. I'm going to turn off the dome light. Okay, this is turning it off in the render, and then this will return it off in the viewer. Okay, all right, so let's start adding some lights because that's going to make some difference here. So let's go to the lights. Let's go area light. Okay, and we want to start moving that around. So I want to definitely start adding some more light in here, and you can see the lighting information I'm getting in here. And again, I can start getting a different look in here. I can make that area light a little bit bigger, which you can see how much stronger that light's starting to get. And you can see that is happening over there. So I'm going to pull that back a little bit. I don't want it to be so hot on him, just giving a little bit more like a nice little fill light through the front, right? So I also want to change the color of that. Let's go ahead and change the color. And let's do a little bit more of a warmer light. Yes, might get some warm because there's some yellows in this. Maybe a little aggressive. aggressive, just a little aggressive there with the warmth, right? And then I have the intensity of this a little bit, so I can knock that down a little bit so that the light's just giving some nice front light coloring here. Let's go ahead. I'm going to keep adding some lights. Let's add another area light. Let's pull this one up and through here. I'm going to rotate that. Let's put a little bit, maybe a light that can be a rim a little bit. So again, because the render view is looking at one camera, I can start adjusting this light and looking through other things this way through here, right? And start adding maybe another light through here. Start creating a nice little, some kind of rim through here from the other side, right? This is pretty aggressive, so I'm going to pull back on that a little bit. It's a little strong. There we go. So now we're getting some rim light through there. This one too, I think I'm going to give this a little bit of different color. Give it a little bit of a blue. That way you guys can also really see what that is doing. So now I'm getting a little bit of some rim light through there. Let's go ahead and I'm going to make another light for the top. Let's add another light up here above just to bring this scene a little bit more to life, right? I want to get a little bit of that top, and I'm going to go ahead and make that also area light be a little bit bigger, right? And start rendering that down. That's getting, again, a little too hot for me, so I'm going to pull that light back. Just want to start creating something that's even coming a little bit from that HDR, right? And seeing what I start to get. And see, the nice thing about this is, you know, we're getting the information from ZBrush for the sculpt and texturing. I'm doing a lot of editing through here, and then I'm seeing the render updating instantly for me over here on this side. And I'm going to show you guys other examples today too as well. So I'm going to say right about there. Okay. So now that I have start creating a little bit better lighting, I'm going to add a little bit more to my scene in here. So I'm going to go now to my camera, which is my render cam here, and let's add a depth of field. So I'm going to right click on this. Okay. And I'm going to go into my camera settings tags, and I'm going to add a redshift camera tag. All right. And then this is going to give me the ability in here to add a focal shift. So I'm going to come into, I'm probably not even pronounce it correct, Pokem. You guys can help Pokey. Okay. So I'm going to say override that. Okay. And then enable it. And then now this is all I need to do through here. I'm going to say just focal distance. And then now all I need to do is adjust this slider. And if I start cranking this up, we're going to start seeing getting a depth of field to start coming through. Okay. But I don't want to just do this. I need to also tell it where this depth of field needs to start, right? So in the object here, okay, in this object setting down, not in the tag, I can click on this little eye swatch, right? And then come over here into Cinema 4D, say click, and then I want to start saying, where do I want that exactly to start, right? So I want this to start in a certain area through here, right? So that's what this can help you do, right? Is figure out where do you want that to start, right? Happening in there, okay? And right now, this is selecting the camera too. So I can even, if I want to, I can tell it not make it visible in Cinema 4D. So the camera is still there. And so if you have things that are kind of, you know, in your way and you want to manipulate and start doing this, you can start seeing a render starting to happen over through here. Okay, the next thing that I probably want to do is what f-stop do I want to go with to start changing that depth of field that's happening through here. So you're going to need to change your f-stops, and you're going to need to change where you want that blurring to start happening. I also like in the tag of this, I like to change my blade count to 4. What that's doing is it's changing when you're getting the depth of field. This is just saying, do you want more, you know, a shape? What shape? So if you did this to 3, it'd be you'd start seeing triangular shapes. If I start cranking, so see that you can start seeing some triangle shapes through here, right? So I'm going to go more squared shape through that, right? So you can see I can really start kicking out and getting a really nice render. That top light is just, it's really aggressive. Let's knock that down. It's too much happening on that top light right now. And then start moving it and start moving that around. So we got a lot of ways now to start really using Redshift, okay, to go about finding some things out, right? So this is the workflow of getting, again, our maps out of ZBrush, using UDIM's ability, and start manipulating and playing with this, okay? So another thing that we want to start looking at besides this, okay, is I want to go back into ZBrush and let's take another type of model. Let's take something like this, okay? And again, I'd like to thank another artist. This is definitely not mine. Thomas, I want to thank you again for providing this with me so I can play along with this and show what you can do. So again, this is an example of I want to render this out into Redshift, and I want to take advantage of having the refractions and reflections and creating a jewel that's going to look really good and having nice metals and everything as well for in this case. So again, this is going to be just taking the raw data straight from ZBrush. This is no maps, nothing. I just want to take this data and get it in over there, okay? So I've already got that tab open. So here we go, and we don't need, right, so sorry, I'm going to close this kaiju one. We don't need that anymore. I don't need to make any saves. So you can see this is having tab based up here on the, okay, so I'm now going to switch to a scene that has the rings in it. So you can see this is going to have multiple rings. And so because I switched to the scene, you can see it's instantly now giving me my renders. And again, this is models straight from ZBrush. You can see how fast I'm starting to get a really nice render in the Redshift side, okay? And being able to get in here and look at, you know, figuring out where I want that and letting that actually have an ability to render out a very nice reflections happening through here. Some refractions are happening in through here. Some great transparency. And it's a nice way to get some really cool materials through here. Right. So what I want to do though now is not just this. I don't want to just maybe even, I'm maybe rendering in Redshift. And let's say, and this is what I'm about to show you guys is also beneficial for any renderer that you're going to use. I want to take in essence this scene, and if my colleague Darren, if you're watching, thank you. He put this together for me too. So thank you again. I want to take the rendering settings that are all set here with all, in essence, this lighting and a certain material. I want to take this out of Redshift and bring it into ZBrush. So this workflow I'm about to show you guys, this will work with any renderer, okay? So that you'll be able to use this. So I'm going to adjust my render settings, okay? I'm gonna do a perfect square. So I'm just gonna do 512 by 512, all right? So I have a perfect square here. I got 512 by 512, so it's just my size of my render that I have. Okay, and then I'm going to import a sphere. I'm just going to import a physical sphere. So in the file, I'm going to say merge project. So that's going to allow me to open that up. So I'm just going to go grab my sphere that I have. Where, let's see, you guys don't need me looking for the sphere. Oh, it's one more folder down. So this is just an OBJ that I'm going to bring in and plop in. I'm going to just let it drop in the scene. So you can see it's right below the skull. The renders will start updating. So right here, here's our sphere. Okay. I'm going to start now looking at some of these. So for example, let's start turning some things off in here. So let's turn off the mermaid, which is this again. I'm going to hold down the Alt key and double click onto the dots. That's going to turn off both in the viewer and this, right? And I don't need ring 3, and then I don't need the skull ring right now. Let's just stick with this ring. Also don't need the floor anymore, okay? And what I want to do is just focus on this sphere, okay? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy the material from the ring that's this other ring that's over here. We'll rotate, whoops, we'll rotate over here. this other ring over here, right? I want to take this material and put it on the sphere. So I just held the control key, click and dragged over so I could copy it to this sphere. So this is the only reason I needed this ring. So I'm gonna go ahead and turn this off. We don't need that anymore. And it's also got another gems in here too. So we'll turn off everything that I need through here. Okay, so I want this to focus in here, right? So I'm just gonna take a look at this sphere. Okay, and then this is something that you're gonna wanna be able to do, all right, on through this. This is all you're gonna do. I'm gonna take a look here. Let's zoom out this a little bit. And I'm gonna start just zooming in on this. So now this is a clipping that's starting to happen. So this is, again, this workflow that I'm showing you guys, you can use with any renderer that you want to. So let's see, I'm using camera 2. Let's go in here, okay? And I wanna change some settings through here. So I'm gonna come in through here and let's go into, where are you? View settings. Okay, and then the view, and start changing some other elements through here in the camera if I want to. Okay, so I want this clipping to start happening through here. So I'm just going to, this is an important part through here, okay, is I want the sphere in the render to be clipped. So I want it to have clipping happening everywhere, okay? So I want this top, bottom, left, and right to have a clipping. So I'm just going to start using my render to start kind of zooming in a little bit on this. And you don't need a lot clipped, okay? It's just a little bit, not too much, just enough to get some clipping within the sphere. All right, so we'll go there. That looks pretty good. All right, and then now what I'm going to do is I want to tell this to render out now, okay? So this is, I'm in like all my settings for my camera and things like this, right? And you can switch through modes through here, all right? And here I can switch to the project and tell it so it doesn't have the clipping. So I can switch here to tiny for the clipping if you want. Don't want it clipping over in your viewer. It doesn't matter really to me. I'm just showing you guys stuff right here. So I'm zooming out a little bit more. There we go. Something like that, okay? And I'm now just gonna render this out. So when you render this out, okay, you can click in here to render out. You render out the scene, and then all you need to do is save this out, okay? So I'm gonna save this out as a PSD, all right? And then I'm gonna say, okay, and then just save that out and then name it, okay, to what you want to be able to name this to what you're seeing, okay? So I'm gonna save as a PSD, we'll just call it all rings, something like this. Right, so now I'm done with that. I don't need this rendering, I don't need this rendering. I wanna come back into ZBrush. Okay, so now I've just got this ring again with like a little purple, and now I wanna take that metal material that I had with, and remind you, all the lighting that I had in Redshift, I wanna bring that into ZBrush, okay? And so I wanna come in through here and look at the material that's selected right now. So you can do this by just click and dragging over and we'll get the material. So right now this is a Madcap Pearl that's selected. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna come to the material, and at the very bottom of this, you can see there's an image, and you can see it's a sphere. And you notice that it's clipped on all 4 sides, the top, the bottom, the left, and right. So then I'm gonna replace this image with an image that I made, right, from that rendered scene. And then now you can see I'm getting, in essence, this is a way to take the lighting information and everything from Redshift and bring it right into ZBrush. And then now I've got a new material using Redshift to create the material for ZBrush. Right? And then of course now, if you want to render in ZBrush, you could also render here inside of ZBrush. So it's just a great way to kind of, you're trying to use all these programs together to get to a nice end result, okay? So now that you have the ability of having ZBrush, okay, with Maxon One, right? You have access to Cinema 4D if you want, and Redshift. So one thing that I want to also highlight here is Redshift itself also has its own subscription, and it can be used in multiple applications as well. It can be used in Maya, Cinema 4D, obviously, Houdini, Katana, and Blender. But also what's really nice now with Maxon One, remember I said like something for educators and students. So for those of you who are watching that are students and educators, one big thing now for the ZBrush world is now that ZBrush is part of Maxon One, you now as a student or instructor in a major institution, you can get Maxon One for $9.99 every 6 months. Okay, that's not every month, that's every 6 months. So in 1 year, it's less than $20 to now have access to everything that I've been messing with today, which is Cinema 4D, Redshift, ZBrush, and more. So this is new to our ZBrush community, having the ability to, as a student or an instructor, get into ZBrush at a great price point, okay? So this is why I wanted to take the time to kind of show you guys that you have the ability now to take stuff out of ZBrush, throw it into Cinema 4D, and then rendering with Redshift. So it's really a great way to work within the system. Okay, so again, we now have been joined with the Maxon One subscription. So for those of you looking at this for ZBrush, you have multiple ways to get in ZBrush. You have a professional license, you have a monthly subscription, you have a yearly subscription just for ZBrush, and now it's part of Maxon One. All right, and then obviously the extra benefit to that as a student and educator is there's a Maxon One EDU version, which is only $9.99 every 6 months. Right, and so there you have it. There's a lot more exciting things coming down the pipe we're going to be having, right? But I wanted to take the time to show you guys workflows of getting stuff out of ZBrush into Cinema 4D and rendering in Redshift. Okay, so that's it for the stream today. I really appreciate you all watching the stream. Hopefully you took away a lot of great stuff that you're going to be able to do, and you start being able to go kick out some renders in Redshift and having some fun with that. I know I've been having a lot of fun sitting there figuring out and doing some things within Redshift and doing some stuff through there. So really, really cool renders through here, and then being able to take stuff out of Redshift and do what we're doing right here. And then don't forget, there's the Go Z ability. So thank you for watching again. Don't forget, we got more streams coming up. Tomorrow we've got a stream coming up with Huxley. This is another example of people using ZBrush and Redshift even together. So if you haven't seen that trailer, you're gonna wanna come by tomorrow. It's at 11 o'clock. It's one of Ben Moreau's passion projects. So he's been working on it for 10 years, but the whole team that worked on the trailer, they're gonna be joining us in a stream tomorrow at 11 a.m. to show you guys how they were using ZBrush to come up with everything, and then also rendering in Redshift as well. So you don't want to miss that stream. And then we're live at NAB this coming weekend. NAB's this weekend. So we'll be doing presentations live on the showroom floor and also streaming those out to you. So we've got streams Sunday through, let's see, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Each day there'll be a ZBrush stream happening live at the NAB showroom floor. So if you're going to be there physically, come by the Maxon booth. I'll be there Sunday, Monday. Love to meet you. Love to say hello. It's great to be back, be able to see you all again. So thank you again for watching this stream. It's been a lot of fun. Again, I'm Paul Gabriel with ZBrush Live, and have a great day.